Warning: this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Give us 1 hour and we'll help you change the way you think about happiness. Harvesting Happiness with Lisa Cypers Kamen is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Each week, Lisa spotlights diverse trendsetters and change agents who are the greatest contemporary thinkers and doers, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. Your host, Lisa Cypers Kamen, is a widely recognized applied positive psychology expert, author, documentary filmmaker, and lecturer specializing in optimal lifestyle management. Let's get to it. Here's Lisa.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us on today's show, where you will learn how to beat burnout, restore your health and vitality. My first guest is Dr. Amy Shah. She is a double board-certified medical doctor and nutrition expert with training from Cornell, Columbia, and Harvard universities. Drawing from her background in internal medicine and allergy and immunology, as well as her own wellness journey, Dr. Shah has dedicated her practice to helping her patients feel better and live healthier through her integrative and holistic approach to wellness. She is the author of I'm So Effing Tired, a proven plan to beat burnout, boost your energy, and reclaim your life. Amy, thanks for joining me on the show. I am so grateful that you are here because you are going to speak to the masses today. They're all suffering from the same thing, sister.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. I was suffering too, and I still have to go back to the basics sometimes especially during this pandemic.
Yeah. God, who isn't pooped? Who isn't pooped from being cooped up in the
emotionally,
unknown?
physically?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
In the dark, even though you're a doctor, and as enlightened as you are by the medical journals that you read and the support that you get from your peers, there still are so many unknowns that you, like the rest of us, are dealing with.
100%. I think that this is an area that's not well explored, that's not well studied. We barely know anything about our immune system, our hormone system, our gut health. I mean, there's so much that we don't know. And this is one of these topics that most conventional doctors and that are geniuses, otherwise don't have an answer for.
So when we talk about hormonal well-being, I think this is, pointing in the direction of your wheelhouse, right? Like our bodies are pretty ruled by hormones.
Yeah. I mean, there is a very clear cycle for most women in most of their years between the years of, puberty to menopause. So the bulk of our life is literally ruled by hormonal changes. And anyone that has gone through, PMS, a period, a perimenopause, pregnancy, I mean, our hormones literally rule our body. So that's the first place that I started looking when I was going through my journey, and I was surprised to find a few things.
Talk a little bit about your journey, because not only are you a doctor, but you are a patient. You went through the process, and the process is what brought you here to the book and this conversation.
100%. My journey began because I knew there was something wrong with me, just like millions of women that I talk to or that I've heard from others, is that we know that there's something off. And usually it's, written off to your post-pregnancy, you are busy, you are getting older, you are in perimenopause, you have adrenal fatigue. And there's just so many things that we kind of write it off to, and nobody can give us tools to fix it. And if you go to different types of practitioners, you'll get 10 different answers about how you should go about fixing this. So my journey started because I had done nutrition degree as undergrad. Then I went to medical school, and then I did my internal medicine residency. And then I did a fellowship in immunology and allergy. I learned all about the immune-gut connection. And then I found myself having gut symptoms and fatigue symptoms and hormonal symptoms. And I just couldn't explain it with all the knowledge that I had learned. So I went to my top mentors. I talked to all kinds of different doctors, my GI friends, my hormone specialists, my general doctors that treated women all the time, and none of them could really explain it, because I realized that medicine does not have an explanation for, why you're so tired, especially if all your blood tests come out normal. So for most people, they will get their thyroid tested and they will get their blood levels. And of course, if something comes up, your thyroid is low, your, iron is low, then there's a solution. But many women get told, well, nothing came up. So it's either in your head, or it's because, you're so busy, and there's all these explanations about why you may be feeling tired. So I took it upon myself to start to research it. And the first thing I found was adrenal fatigue. And I know we talked we mentioned it before in off the air, but adrenal fatigue is what people kind of find on Google. And I was surprised because I had never heard of it through my whole medical journey. So I looked into it, and I knew that wasn't the issue, because I knew it was more than just the adrenal. So I kept looking, and I found some gut health issues that I was having, maybe connected and maybe giving me fatigue. We now know that the gut communicates with the brain, and the brain communicates with the gut. So if you're inflamed in your gut, you will be inflamed and tired. And then I realized that inflammation was a big cause of my fatigue. And so I put it together in this book that's coming out. And I basically said, hey, everybody should know what I just learned, because it can empower you to make changes that will last you a lifetime. And you can teach to your friends and colleagues and sisters and daughters.
And it's outside of a prescription pad. The fix,
100%.
The prescription is a non-pharmaceutical intervention, which I love.
Yeah, 100%. It is literally learning how to manage our energy, including, emotional energy, which is what has been drained so intensely over the last, few months to a year or more.
Or 5 years or longer. Yeah. But that's a whole other conversation. But when we talk about managing emotional energies, is it a chicken and the egg kind of scenario? Are we more predisposed to emotional imbalance if we have the pre-existing condition of inflammation in the body? Is that coming first, or is the emotional exhaustion coming first, which in turn inflames the body?
Well, it's a two-way street. It's kind of talking to each other. So when we're eating things that are inflammatory, or we're drinking a lot or smoking or doing other things that cause inflammation, our immune system and our gut bacteria, so literally the bacteria that live in our gut, talk to our immune system and say, hey, this stuff looks weird. Think you should come over here and let's check it out. And whenever they see that, they create a little inflammation in that area. And that is telling your brain that there's inflammation going on in the gut. And it looks like the same immune inflammation cells that are in the gut are found also in the brain. So we know that there is direct crosstalk between the gut and the brain. And you can go both ways. So you can be thinking, we're learning now that you can be anxious and that will create GI issues. And then you can be inflamed in the gut and that can create brain issues.
Got it. And when we talk about the kinds of foods that cause inflammation, are we talking about highly processed foods? Are we talking about all the white foods? And I don't mean cauliflower. All the other white foods.
The other white foods. Absolutely. It's if I had to pick the biggest offenders, it would be sugar, white processed sugar, and then white processed flours, and then refined oils would be the three top offenders.
So the foods that many of us will gravitate towards when we get anxious or when we need a quick jolt of energy, we might reach for the candy bar, the cookie, the stuff that is not good for us, but we're attracted to it.
Yeah, our brains have been tricked by big food companies to crave those things. And basically, they literally have labs where they have people hooked up to brain monitors and they're watching all the different parts of the brain that light up with their foods, and they make it so it's addicting and we will reach for it when we want to have some soothing. And it's really scary how they've really hijacked our biology.
Well, you're the doctor here, but I'm going to just drop in a hormone or a chemical, which is dopamine, right? That when we reach for those things, we get that dopamine release, that pleasure spike, which makes us want more.
Yes. And then there's serotonin release, which makes us feel happy. It's like the happy feeling, comfort. And then so you're basically getting dopamine and serotonin hits that are much bigger than you would get from any natural food. That's why we end up reaching for those. Of course, any child is going to want to have more cupcakes versus, more apples.
Yes.
Because they don't know that this is hijacking their brain. And by the time we become adults, it's so difficult to turn back the clock.
So we know what causes the inflammation. And then what about the irritability in the gut? Is it also the same set of white or processed foods, or are there other foods that do so?
Yeah. So the gut is very, very good at processing fiber. And what we don't do in our modern society is eat enough fiber. So we know that past generations through, work on old intestines, they're able to see evidence that people used to eat 85 grams of fiber a day. We do a measly 15 a day in modern world. And guess what? The fiber is the food for the gut bacteria that keeps everything calm and running well. So what I say is that, white and processed foods and sugar and processed oils cause inflammation. And then when we're talking about gut health, we really have to think about fiber, the fact that we're having very low fiber foods. And so if you're trying to improve your gut and your immune health, you have to not only get rid of those things, but add in 6 to 8 cups of vegetables every single day.
Yum. For me, that's a yum.
Yeah, I know. And I think that once you get used to it, when I was going on my journey, I did not realize that my diet was that 15 grams because I was busy. I was a mom, or I am a mom, and I was grabbing coffee from Starbucks. And then I would grab a muffin or something really easy, or a granola bar. And I realized that even though I wasn't unhealthy per se, like driving through McDonald's drive-through, I was consuming a lot of sugar and I was not eating nearly enough fiber.
And the caffeine. We're going to need to take a break. And I want to, when we come back, talk a little bit about caffeine and the effect upon adrenals and the thyroid and so on and so forth. The book that we're speaking of today, or just the general state of mind we're speaking of today, is I'm So Effing Tired, a proven plan to beat burnout, boost your energy, and reclaim your life. My guest is Dr. Amy Shah, MD. To learn more, go to amymdwellness.com. Once again, that's amymdwellness.com. On Twitter at Amy Shah MD, and on Facebook it is Amy Shah MD, and on Instagram Fasting MD. We'll be right back, and that is a promise. Hang on just a minute. Before we pause, let's talk about the business of podcasting. As a business owner, I get how important making a great hiring decision is to my success. Although our team is tiny, each collaborator is a valued contributor in our weekly production. Basketball hero Michael Jordan said it best: talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. And that's why I'm proud to partner with Indeed. Indeed.com is the #1 hiring site in the world and will help you find the high-impact hire you need, just like they have done for more than 3 million businesses. And Indeed will help you find quality candidates instantly with Indeed's Instant Match. Unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility, delivering a quality shortlist faster. With Indeed, you only pay for what you need. You can pause your account at any time, and there are no long-term contracts. Indeed searches through millions of resumes in their database to deliver you great candidates instantly. With Instant Match, you see a list of great candidates with zero wait. Who doesn't love instant service and instant gratification? Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. 73% of online job seekers in the U.S. visit Indeed each month, according to ComScore Total Visits. Want your quality shortlist fast? You need Indeed. Right now, our listeners get a free $75 credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/HH. This is Indeed's best offer available anywhere. Get a free $75 credit at Indeed.com/HH. Indeed.com/HH. Offer valid through March 31st. Terms and conditions apply. Now let's grab that break.
To learn more about cultivating sustainable well-being at home and the office, visit harvestinghappiness.com and explore Lisa's experiential on-site brain fitness workshops, corporate programming, and speaking engagement services.
And we're back, continuing the conversation about how to beat burnout, restore your health and vitality. Let's get back to the conversation with my guest, Dr. Amy Shah. Dr. Shah is in the house. She is a double board certified medical doctor and nutrition expert with training from Cornell, Columbia, and Harvard universities. She's also been on her own wellness journey and came to really understand about integrated health and well-being from her own story, and is now sharing that story with us and how to help ourselves, Amy, sort of get off the squirrel wheel of eating foods that are inflaming our bodies and compromising our health.
Lisa, this is such a difficult task because for so many years we have conditioned our brains to getting all those dopamine hits and serotonin hits from food. And we use it for comfort. We use it when we're happy. We use it when we're sad. We use it when we're stressed. And getting off that hamster wheel of eating to create emotional response is really difficult. So one of the things I talk about is this concept called circadian fasting. This is a concept that's a little different than traditional intermittent fasting. Traditional intermittent fasting just means not eating food for a certain amount of time, whether it be 12 to 24 hours. And it's not very specific about how to do that. Circadian fasting is more specific. What it means is that you have a circadian rhythm inside of you, every single cell, not just from the sun when we look at the sun outside and in our brains, but literally there's a clock in every single one of our cells. And there is an optimal time to do things. So our body uses light dark as its biggest indicator of morning and night. And so even if you work a night shift, your body is still looking at daylight and night as, when you're supposed to be resting is nighttime, and when you're supposed to be eating and metabolism is daytime. So we know that it's very clear that our body shuts off many of the metabolic processes 2 to 3 hours before bed. And what bed is for, in this term is between 10 and 11 p.m. So circadian fasting is eating with your circadian rhythm and fasting overnight. So that may seem like, oh, well, my grandmother used to say, no snacks after dinner, or the kitchen is closed. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. About 100 years ago, it was very easy to do circadian fasting. It was a way of life. In our modern times, it is not very easy, and it is very tempting to eat late into the night and stay up late into the night. But the more and more biology we're learning, the more we realize that, oh, wow, every cell in our bodies is primed to do metabolic processes during the day, especially between the hours of, say, 12 and 5 p.m. And then at the tail end of the day, they're just kind of getting warmed up and cooled down. And then late into the night, we are very much metabolically compromised. meaning the same food, the same load of, say, sugar will cause a bigger spike in your blood sugar, in your insulin levels, and have a larger impact on disease progression.
Interesting.
So,
very interesting.
Yeah, there's 15, most Americans are eating 15 plus hours a day, meaning they're literally just stopping to go to bed, sleep 8 hours or whatever it is. So it is very, very hard for people to stop eating even for 12 hours. So I tell people to start there. I say, go from 7 to 7 or 8 to 8. So 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that is circadian fasting. And what we found is that just, we do all this common knowledge things about, you've probably heard before that you should be eating better, shouldn't be, eating processed foods, but you may not know that changing the timing of it can have a huge impact on your health. And along with the fasting piece, I put in the light dark piece. So 2 times a day, I suggest that people get some natural light. Now, natural light doesn't need to be bright sun, but it has to be outside. So you can open a window if you can't get outside because it's so cold. But really, ideally, you'll be outside for even a couple of minutes a day, twice a day.
And this also follows research that was done in Japan about nature bathing and reduction in suicide, and the idea that we're getting outside, you're getting the vitamins from the sun and the chlorophyll from the trees.
Yeah.
So is that kind of along the same lines, that we're really feeding our brains as well as our bodies when we do that?
It's almost like multitasking. And we women love multitasking. It is literally, there are brain connections that are lit up when we are in nature. But then there's a separate process that kind of goes through our eyes and straight from our retinas to a circadian clock in the suprachiasmatic nucleus part of our brain. And it inputs and says, oh, it's daytime. Just tell the whole body that it's daytime. And the suprachiasmatic nucleus, they send out signals to the rest of the body that, hey, it's daytime. And same thing if you sense darkness. And so not only are you getting the soothing feeling of being in nature, you are getting kind of reinforcement, and things start to work in synchrony. And you'll have better gut health, you'll have better hormone health, and most importantly, you'll feel less tired.
It makes sense. And I don't think what you're suggesting is really that hard to do. It's tiny little shifts. Like you're saying, instead of a 15-hour feeding window, you reduce it down to a 12-hour feeding window. And then maybe you reduce it further and further and further till you're in that. I don't know what the optimal eating window is. If it's an 8-hour window, is that the idea?
Yeah. So in the WTF plan in the book, I go into detail about how to time this. So what I suggest is that you don't do a full, 16-hour fast with an 8-hour eating window every single day. I find that it can be very stressful on the body because it's like asking you to do a HIIT workout every single day.
Yeah.
Your body is not so resilient to added stress, and especially women's bodies, and especially around certain parts of our cycle, this can do more harm than good. And that's what people do in conventional intermittent fasting. They read, oh, I'm supposed to do 16 hours of a fast and eat for 8 hours. And they do this every day. And just like them, I tried the same thing. And I pretty much, after about 4 to 5 days, found myself exhausted. I couldn't sleep. And I realized, something is wrong. This whole intermittent fasting thing is not working for me. So what I suggest in the book is a more modified approach, a 12, and then alternate it with a push fast, like a longer fast on certain days of the week.
So the WTF plan in your book, I'm So Effing Tired, is it WTF as in what the frick, or is it Wednesday,
Yes.
Thursday, Friday?
No, WTF as in what the frick. But it could mean Wednesday, Thursday, Friday if you wanted it to.
Got it. Well, this is great information, and it's sort of hitting the mind-body connection, ways for us to take better charge of our health, to just eat better, which feeds into, not only our physical and emotional health, but also longevity.
Yeah, exactly. The longevity piece is just so fascinating.
And the rest piece, which we didn't really talk about today, but the relationship between having high quality sleep and rest and play and where that fits into the equation.
Oh, that's such a huge, I have a chapter, entire chapter dedicated to managing your energy and, talking about emotional energy, talking about how we can be better managers of our own energy. We just give it away freely to, late night internet, Netflix, and then during the day to toxic people.
Yeah. Oh, so true. And the devices. Don't forget our little devices.
Oh, yeah. I always tell people, I'm like, one bout of blue light delays your melatonin release by 90 minutes.
Wow. That's compelling reason to put the darn thing away. Like,
Yes.
Have bedtime for the devices, like 9 o'clock lights out. That's it. You shouldn't even be on them. And it's hard to do, but it does help.
It does help. Makes a big difference. I say, even if it's for 15 minutes, you're just putting it away before bed, put it on airplane mode or silent and go do your nighttime routine.
Yeah. Yeah. Go to sleep.
Yeah.
Go have sex. Imagine that.
Exactly.
Oh, Dr. Amy Shah, thanks for joining me on the show today. The book we're talking about is I'm So Effing Tired, a proven plan to beat burnout, boost your energy, and reclaim your life. Dr. Amy, thanks for being with us today. The website to learn more is amymdwellness.com. Once again, that's amymdwellness.com. On Twitter at Amy Shah MD, on Facebook at Amy Shah MD, and on Instagram, it is at Fasting MD. Thanks so much, Amy. This has been really, really enlightening, really, to understand a little bit more about the systems in our body and the way we can get them to work better and smarter.
Thanks, Lisa, so much for having me.
Oh, a pleasure. And we'll take a break. We'll be right back. That's a promise.
Did you know that happiness is actually good for your health? Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Connect with us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and follow Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen for a daily dose of inspiration.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us now, we're talking about how to beat burnout, restoring your health and vitality. My next guest is Dr. Christa Kuberry. Dr. Christa Kuberry leads Yoga Alliance's ongoing efforts to evaluate and evolve yoga teacher training standards. Christa has been practicing asana for more than 15 years and received her PhD in 2015. Christa has extensive experience in corporate wellness and is a nationally recognized educator. And she is in the house to talk about the yoga of life, the yoga of dealing with this pandemic. And for those of you out there who thought that they would never be caught dead doing yoga, might have even tried a class or two in the past several months. Welcome, Christa.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And exactly, I think there's a huge need for yoga and wellness in general right now. And so happy to be here and excited to talk about this topic, particularly from the perspective of dealing with what's happening with current events. So, we have a lot going on. There is a pandemic. We're dealing with issues of social justice, equity. There's wildfires. There's virtual learning and back to school. And even just me saying this out loud is already giving me some anxiety. So obviously that is real for most of us, right? And so it's magnified our need to mitigate stress, anxiety, to think about what this is doing to our sleep patterns and our overall well-being. And this, is not only in terms of just practicing asana particularly, but also how we're living our lives. And a lot of us are alone a lot more and aren't getting to go to the gym or even move. So how is this in terms of mind, body wellness really an important aspect to be talking about? So thank you so much for having me, and excited to dive into that a little bit more and talk about maybe what this looks like from a research perspective, as well as what this looks like for different communities. And as you said, different people who are doing this thing, yoga, that they never maybe imagined that would be them, or that they would be doing it, in their living room via Zoom or whatever platform they've logged on with. So
well,
again,
I think that there are two things in terms of the yoga world. As a practitioner myself of now 20 years and the evolution of my own practice, and then practicing during this pandemic, I found it, as many of us have, to be a lifeline to sanity. The idea of logging into even a Zoom class or practicing on my own, and I'm sure you can elaborate on your own experience and what you've witnessed and researched, has been the tether through this whole thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, holy moly. It's the tools and the tips and the ability to be able to have the practice of yoga, I think, is crucial. And science is backing that up. But just from my own perspective, I mean, I have a third grader who's doing virtual learning. I work full time. I moved across the country and finished a book during the pandemic. And I think without all of the tools that I have gained from yoga, I mean, I think I would have lost it, and I was close to losing it without the tools. But really, it's just, taking a second. And I was speaking with one of my dear friends, a yoga teacher, Matthew Sanford, who's big in the accessibility lane. And he gave me this idea, and I've been utilizing this as a sort of practice of yoga where I just take a few moments to lay under my life. So, it's almost like you're in Shavasana, and you're just, rather than being overwhelmed, you allow yourself to be under it all and just being a witness to it, right? Which is that practice of yoga of presence. And I think that has been a crucial, personal tool for me. And just like a little way to remember, it's like almost like that Dave Matthews song, Laying Under the Table and Dreaming or something. But, it's like, okay, there's my life, and I just get to take a break from it, which I feel like we all need, as well as the ability to step into your body and move through the practices of yoga, right? And there's so many studies that are being published right now that are backing this up and giving credence to the fact that we need these things. We need to be able to sit with ourselves, to be in our body, to be self-reflective, to experience the full spectrum of our lives. And, there was a study that came out, I think it was maybe 5 years ago or so. It was a Harvard study, and it said, 10 minutes of mindfulness practice changes your brain, changes your body, changes the, neurobiology and the physiology. It changes and shrinks the places of the brain where there's fear and anxiety, and it grows the matter in the brain where there is, the ability to have critical thought, logic, and compassion. And so just 10 minutes of being mindful, thinking about whether that is in a movement practice or while washing your dishes, or just being aware without judgment, is such a huge benefit to who we are as human beings. And then, go ahead.
I wanted to jump in here and just bring up a point about yoga and the physical practice and the mental practice and the crossroads of the two, because most of us think of yoga as going through a series of asanas or yoga poses, but there's another level of yoga, right? The yoga that goes on in the brain, where we are bringing ourselves, to the present moment. We are allowing what comes through our mind to pass through our mind. We're setting aside judgment. We're not resisting the things that we're thinking or we're feeling. So there's this multi-dimensional practice of yoga, which I think people often overlook because they go right to the physical practice, and it's not solely the physical practice.
No, not at all. And I know, in classrooms and stuff, they're doing mindfulness moments. We're actually focused on, we have a whole scientific research project at Yoga Alliance where we have our director of research, Satvir Khalsa, who also works with Harvard and the National Institute of Health. And he is working with one of our consultants to really put together a lot of different journal research and ideas about how this works and how it has been effective for lots of pieces of both mind and body, but also in terms of the body. I mean, when we think about yoga and we think about the therapeutic benefit, which I feel like most of us need the yoga and the therapy now more than ever as well, just because there's so much going on in the world. Yoga allows us to be able to, through movement, move some of those emotions, some of what's going on in our lives through our bodies without having to do talk therapy, without really having to do anything except move it through our bodies itself. And I think that's another good piece to think about.
I agree with you. And the element that comes to mind as you describe this is the idea, and you used the word earlier in the conversation about witnessing or observing what is and not trying to place judgment on what's happening. And I think that that is a valuable, both a tool and a lesson for even a non-yoga practitioner, right? To take a more observant position of our lives without the need to fix or do something to change it, to just accept.
Very much. For sure. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is it's like we recognize through yoga that we can't control what happens to us, but what we can learn how to control is our reaction to what happens to us. And that takes that moment of, observing and being aware. And it also takes that moment of even noticing, how am I feeling in my body? Like, how are these emotions making me feel, and what am I holding on to? And how does that holding on to these things, these cortisols, all of the stuff that's happening, create that dis-ease, right? And so how can we find these moments of ease? And how can yoga provide those tools that are not only, just good? I mean, the most simple thing is to breathe, right? And most of us don't even breathe right.
Yes,
right?
we don't. We don't.
Yes.
I wanted to just jump in and ask you to share some of the physiological benefits of doing yoga, because you mentioned the word cortisol reduction, or the words cortisol reduction, that, the stress hormone in the body is alleviated when we practice yoga. But there are other physiological benefits, and I'd love for you to share them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we take it again to this notion of the breath, right? So the breath is really the only language that your nervous system speaks. So it is that bridge or that connection between your mind and your body. And so when we practice yoga and we deepen the breath, we allow ourselves to step into a space of rest and digest. We allow ourselves to be able to process all of the things that are going on in our bodies. Not only that, we allow more oxygenation to happen at the cellular level when we take deeper breaths. Another major thing that happens in terms of the physiology of the body is that, the first thing that we do when cortisol happens, which is the same thing if you're being chased by a lion or if you hear the ding of your Outlook, right? Your brain doesn't know the difference.
It's true.
And the first thing that we do is we clench our jaw and we put the tongue on the top of our mouth. And what that does is put us initially, like right away, into that limbic, that fight or flight space. And so it allows you to soften the jaw, to soften the soft palate. And that even softens the pelvic girdle, which allows that to have more space. So, I think it's really fascinating to think of the different ways that our mind and our body are connected, and how that response, or that ability to even recognize and control response, changes our perspective, like when we look outwardly, but also changes the physiology of like, okay, my brain is going to notice that my teeth aren't clenched and that my shoulders are soft, and therefore it's going to find itself feeling safe in the world, rather than if I'm in this constant state of tension, my brain and my nervous system is going to react like I am in a not safe space.
And then some of the other ones that come to mind too is the reduction of the resting heart rate is lowered, the blood pressure is lowered, our balance is improved, flexibility is improved. I mean, all the things that we need for healthy aging, to age well, systems that tend to suffer as we age when we neglect our bodies are improved through the application of yoga.
Exactly. And, it's even like, what I have my mother do is I have her practice tree pose while she brushes her teeth. And so, those can be
great.
places where we put that in, really utilitarian ways to continue to practice balance as you age. And we also know from the brain chemistry of it all that if you practice these mindfulness practices, that it keeps the brain more sort of limber as well. It keeps the synapses firing. So that's helpful, in terms of that space. And again, there are journal articles on the yourya.org in terms of like what are the scientific efficacy of these practices on aging, on children, on stress, on anxiety, on cancer. And so it's fascinating to see how we are mirroring and bringing these two worlds together, and recognizing the necessity of yoga, not only in yes, go to the pretty studio and do yoga, but what does this do in our school systems? What does this do in our prisons?
Yeah.
What does this do for, underestimated populations and people of color? And not only that, how is the digital world, because of COVID, allowing for more access to those as well?
We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to actually touch upon some of those talking points, because there is a deeper conversation about the healing value of yoga in our lives and in our communities. To learn more about the work of Dr. Christa Kuberry, please visit yogaalliance.org on Twitter and Facebook. Those handles are also Yoga Alliance. And you can also connect with Christa directly on Instagram via Dr. Christa Kuberry. Here comes the break. We'll be right back. And that is a promise.
Who says money can't buy happiness? Whether you are a skeptic or seeker, check out Lisa's new book. Are we happy yet? 8 Keys to Unlocking a Joyful Life. A boot camp manual for greater emotional fitness is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, and HarvestingHappiness.com. Here's a truth bomb. Emotions are contagious, and happiness is a universally desired state. But we tend to forget that we all have the freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable each day, regardless of external circumstances. Explore the journey of human happiness, how to find it and keep it, with Lisa's documentary film, H Factor. Where is your heart? Visit HarvestingHappiness.com to learn more.
Welcome back. Let's get back to the conversation with Dr. Christa Kuberry. We're talking about beating burnout, restoring your health and vitality. Let's get back to the conversation. Christa, I'd love for you to just give a little plug about the book. It's not quite out, but it's got an interesting subtitle.
Sure. Yes, definitely. So it is called Is This Yoga? Histories, Concepts, and the Complexities of Contemporary Practice. And it is a labor of love by myself and another scholar, and really serves to bring a missing piece of information, or two worlds really together. So it's written as a guidebook or a textbook that talks about all the various histories and ways that people have understood yoga, the concepts that make up yoga from a variety of angles, as well as thinking about the complexities to today, which speaks to, different communities, issues with misconduct, gurus, ideas about co-option, and how, there hasn't been or should be more places and access and equity in terms of the fact that yoga really is for everybody. So it is coming out by Routledge. We're very excited about that. We went with them because they promised to make it a paperback and somewhat affordable. So looking forward to that being out around the first of the year.
Congratulations. Writing a book is a Herculean task, and we will give more light to the book when it's out in the new year. But let's talk about yoga and the ways that is helping to heal different communities. You spoke about communities of color. You mentioned prisons. I want to also maybe talk a little bit about the military and yoga's place even in government and politics and leadership.
Yes, for sure. I think that's a very important point. And again, it's something that I actually talk about in the last chapter of the book, which is on therapeutics, and really thinking about the fact that yoga is a healing modality, and we know that it has therapeutic benefits, and speaking to a variety of populations. And as I said, with this whole lack of real in-person, there has been especially a shift in the online space of there being more access to communities that maybe didn't have that before. And at the same time, there has been the continued work within those communities in person prior to the pandemic. So we know in terms of, for instance, prison populations, that yoga practices lead to lack of recidivism or people going back to jail because people learned how to control their reactions emotionally because of yoga. And it also provides people, again, a safe space in their bodies. And oftentimes people that find themselves in jail or other, rehabilitation facilities have often experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. And so this whole yoga practice, the ability to utilize the breath and the presence and all of that, allows for them to maybe for the first time in their life feel like they can control a safe arena. And that is in itself empowering. And you hear countless stories from from people in prisons themselves that, you know, there's bright lights, there's oftentimes violence, there's all sorts of things going on, that this a little ability to create their own safe haven is life-saving. And then when they get out and maybe the world is also chaotic, they have that ability to breathe and to move with their own ease. We also know, as you said, in military, I think it's a hugely important one for PTSD as well as for, I know that one of our board members serves, I think he's like one of the first people that they call when there's like a nuclear threat and stuff like that. So he's, you know, has a stressful job. He's also a veteran, and he does yoga with some of the generals and at the war college and teaches them in order for them to be less reactionary and to be able to come from a place of consciousness when they're making decisions.
Yeah, it is a very empowering practice. I mean, I think yoga is for everybody. I agree with you. There is not a person on the planet that can't benefit from yoga or do some form of yoga, no matter what physical or mental state one is in. There's something, there is some adaptation, some accommodation that can be made to help somebody create a practice. That, to me, is the beauty of it.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, just the personal anecdotal, I don't know, you know, if I should really share this, but when I first moved for my Yoga Alliance job, I was previously in academia. I also left a 17-year relationship. I was, you know, single mom in it, the whole thing. And I was in a grocery store and I had this moment where I was like, okay, I'm either going to have a panic attack or I can use yoga. And I literally got into child's pose. I mean, obviously this was pre-pandemic, and in the grocery store, because I knew that if I put my forehead on the earth and I simulated the vagus and I allowed myself to calm down, that I could calm down. Yeah. And so, you know, it's even stuff like that, which seems ridiculous, but truly it was a moment where I was like, this is where I have a choice to use the tools and to not care if other people are judging me as they're walking down the grocery aisle, because this is what I need in the moment to allow myself to like come back.
And that is the yoga in action, right? That is how it works. Right. And I think it is a TMI story in such a good way, such a humanizing way. Like, I think everybody listening can relate to that kind of moment where it's like, oh my God, I need to do something.
Right. I'm losing it. I'm losing it. What can I do? Right.
What can I do? Oh,
I always do that.
Yeah. I mean, and we don't always remember to breathe. Sometimes it takes dropping down to the floor to remember.
Yeah. And the power of a deep breath, right? Like, that is the simplest and most effective way to allow ourselves to calm down, to like, just take a second in a world that is crazy right now.
Crazy. And, you know, I want to thank you for being so honest in sharing that, because we often think that, you know, the people that come on these shows, they are the experts. They have everything together. They're, you know, on point, on the mark every day, every time, every day. And the reality of it is we're all so human, and we all have bad days. We all have moments where we don't think we can keep it together.
Right. Life is full spectrum for every single one of us.
Yes.
And so we have to figure out how we can like not only be vulnerable and support each other in that, but also the tools that we can use and then therefore share from a place of experience the effectiveness of those tools themselves. Right. And I think it was Brene Brown, but she defined or spoke about the fact that the word courage itself the word core comes from the heart.
Yeah.
And courage is like being able to actually be like, I'm a hot mess and I'm also successful and I'm also getting my stuff done. And I also practice yoga, and those don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, agreed. We don't have much time left. And I'd love for you to talk about how the teaching community has so beautifully adapted by using technology to continue the practice, to continue to offer a safe place and create community for students to come from all over the world 24/7. That is also, I think, pretty cool.
Yeah, I've truly been in awe of the yoga community and its ability to pivot, really. And especially a lot of people that were fairly, I would say, scared or cynical about the online space and their utilization and creativity in creating community. And I think that's a big piece that's been missing in this pandemic land, when we're all sort of isolated in our homes or on Zoom, the ability to, I mean, I've heard of people having coffee before and after, or other ways of connecting, of finding camera angles so they can make it more accessible, of, printing out pamphlets and bringing it to nursing homes where people don't have digital events, so that there's a sequence for people to follow through and shares.
Wow.
It's been fantastic to note. And it is this connection globally that we weren't necessarily seeing before either. You have people tuning in from like Pacific Islands and, Buenos Aires and all sorts of places, and engaging with each other about the practice of yoga. So there is this real transnational movement, and there is this real noted notion that we need healing, and people are stepping up and finding ways to bring that to each other and for each other. And at the same time, wanting to be professionals in those spaces and make sure that yoga is still safe and accessible, and figuring out ways to the best of their ability to continue that sort of trend as well.
I wanted to just share two experiences based upon what you've just said. I do yoga with family members, but we're in different states, and on Sundays we often will do family yoga, which is really amazing. And there are other families that are also in different parts of the world that come into this one class with this one teacher, and it's so cool. There's like this sacred moment where everybody is together and practicing. I think that has been a really, really good binder during this whole thing, is that the boundaries, the sightlessness of the whole thing has been a positive. And the other is that although yoga, in my view, has had to slow down a little bit, the pace of the classes have shifted because we're trying to keep our students safe. But the strength has gotten bigger, greater.
I would agree. Yeah, I think there is something to that. There is this sort of everybody slow down a little bit and step in a little bit more, and then recognize that strength both within and then the way that gets, projected outwards, both on the mat and then off the mat into the world, right? We all have to sort of step up as warriors, and those poses are just supposed to be embodiments of what we already are. So opportunities for us to feel that and know that, even when maybe we're not feeling so warrior-like. Yeah,
that's true. Well, thank you for spending some time with us, Dr. Christa Kuberry. The book that is coming out is This Yoga? You can connect with Christa via Yoga Alliance. To learn more, please visit yogaalliance.org. On Twitter at Yoga Alliance, Facebook as well, Yoga Alliance. And on Instagram, you can connect with Christa directly via Dr. Christa Kuberry. Thank you so much for sharing some time and allowing me the opportunity to also extol the virtues of this beautiful transformational practice.
Thank you so much. And yes, appreciate it and appreciate you all, and hope you get out there and do some yoga.
Yes, on and off the mat.
Exactly. More importantly off, but yes, on as well.
Yes, be well. Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen and my guests, Dr. Amy Shah and Dr. Christa Kuberry, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Go out and rock your day.
Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes via our free app or from our libraries at toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, and other fine podcast platforms. To learn more about Lisa's global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU Radio Malibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.